Will the killer clowns from outer space actually invade on the player base that's left in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre? That's what we're going to talk about today as I give you my opinion on what I believe Gunn and Black Tower Studios need to be doing in preparation for Killer Klowns from Outer Space coming out to keep the Texas Chainsaw Massacre game alive. Now, that may sound all pretty dramatic to you, but one of my biggest fears with this game is that they don't hit the numbers they're expecting in one of these DLC drops, and then Killer Klowns comes out, and there's a whole lot of buzz around that game, and then they're like, well, hey, we gave it our best, we're going to walk away, because at the end of the day, they've sold a lot of copies of Texas Chainsaw, and it seems like it's been a pretty damn good success, and so I would hate to see this game fall by the wayside because of another asymmetrical game that's coming out without fully realizing the potential of the Texas Chainsaw, because I don't think we've seen that yet. And so I hope that these guys will continue to make improvements in the game and make some of the improvements that we know are coming to Killer Klowns to help stabilize and maybe even bring players back. So whatever your opinion is, I want to hear that down below after the video. No matter if you agree or disagree with me, let me know. If you like what I do, consider subscribing. Let's go and get into it. Now, one of the things that TerraVision Games and IllFonic is doing right off the rip is they will have bots in the game. Now, I'm sure that, you want real players as much as you can get, but they're not going to let lobby times and waiting times just go crazy. If they have to add a bot or two in order to fill a lobby, that's something they're willing to do. If you played Texas Chainsaw at all and played as the victim specifically, you know that waiting times can be just downright atrocious. And while they're better than what they were in the past, that has been a huge scar on this game and the community for that matter, because people, they get home from work, they have an hour or two to game, they don't want to be spending a quarter or even half of that time inside of the lobby. You already have to have a little bit more patience when you play asymmetrical games like this, and they're horror games, obviously. So your player base is going to be down a little bit compared to some of your big multiplayer games for sure. So having a little bit more patience is totally fine, and I think most of the community gets that. But having 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 minutes in between matches, especially considering that you can die super quick in the Texas Chainsaw, is really unacceptable. So my opinion is these guys, hopefully, they have bots they're working on now. I don't know if that's something they would ever do. I believe I've heard them say that that's not something they want to do, and I understand that. But at the same time, if that's what you have to do to fill a lobby and get people into games quicker, then that's what you need to do. Now, of course, they've taken away the lobby timer, and they've tried to do some things to help speed up the game. But that's going to be a big one, man. If people get into Killer Klowns and they're able to just jump right into a match, and because of the way the game is set up, they're not going to want to leave that match instantly. I'll talk about that here in a minute. Then what are people going to do to maximize their time? Are they going to sit around and wait for Texas Chainsaw? Or are they going to go to Killer Klowns? Well, I think the answer is pretty easy because, again, people have very limited time to play their consoles and play their games. And that also leads me to the other part of this. Killer Klowns, whenever you die as a clown, there's going to be like a minute cooldown, and then you're going to come right back in, right? Texas Chainsaw, you don't really have to worry about that if you're a family member. You're not going to be, killed out of the game. But if you're a victim, in which you can be killed very quickly, in Texas Chainsaw, you need to know that you can get out of a lobby and get right back into a game. In Killer Klowns, once you die as a survivor, you can actually start playing mini games. And so this is going to keep you in longer. So you'll be spectating somebody, you'll be playing these mini games, and you can either give those items that you win in the mini games to the remaining players, or you can keep them for yourself if you happen to get resurrected. That's just another fun little aspect of the game that makes it kind of interesting. And again, it's not going to make people just want to leave automatically. You're going to have people in lobbies, and they should be in those lobbies for a longer amount of time. So again, it's all about maximizing your time whenever you consider that people are at work all day long and they just want to come home, play a game, and have as much fun as they possibly can for that limited amount of time that they have. So again, we always have to think, which game are they going to choose if they are comparable? And that's another issue with Texas Chainsaw. They have one of the worst friend systems that I've ever seen in any game. And hey, maybe my experience with gaming is just limited when it comes to that kind of stuff. Despite the disbanding issues and all that kind of stuff, which are super annoying, you can't build out a friends list. It's really odd. It's the first time I've ever seen in a multiplayer game, whether it's crossplay or not, where you don't have actual friends, right? Unless you're on the same console, and even if you're on the same console, you have no like actual friends list inside of the game. Another thing that just costs you crucial amounts of time. You basically have to send a code off to, anybody that's on another console, and I'm just not sure why they have such a rudimentary way of sending out invites and building a lobby together, and then of course disbanding, which hasn't been as much of an issue. I feel like they've done a pretty good job at least fixing that or addressing that recently, but still, I hope that Killer Klowns is going to be better than that. And I'm gonna go ahead and assume that it will be, just because I feel like Texas is one of the worst games out there when it comes to simple invites, building a friends list, and getting a party together. Another thing with Killer Klowns is you're going to be able to customize not only the victims, but the killers themselves. Or at least be able to customize their weapons and loadouts and all of that kind of stuff, which is really cool. And that's something, again, you don't have in Texas Chainsaw. I've been an advocate now for some time and just saying, hey, in Texas, if you're playing as Leatherface, maybe you could have the chainsaw and you could have his hammer. Maybe as Sissy or Johnny or Cook or any one of the killers, you could actually customize and swap out their weapons. Now, they've added a little bit of customizability to the weapons, but not nearly as much as you would think. Killer Klowns also says that they have a progression system. Now, of course, we have very limited knowledge about how that progression system is going to be, and I don't want to speculate too much, but on April 30th in Texas Chainsaw, you're going to have your level 99, blacked out outfits and oil slick chainsaw for Leatherface, and all of the characters will have that, which is just awesome because now it shows, hey, if you're a level 99 player, you did all of that grinding, you did it for something, and that is a great thing. But they need to add a heck of a lot more customizable items for each one of your characters, but add more and more things to a progression system, in-game currency, whatever, to keep people engaged longer and keep them coming back to the game more often. Now, of course, these games couldn't be any more different. And so one thing I've talked about with Texas is, they want every new character, every item to feel like it can be a part of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre world, which is great. But if it limits the amount of content that you're throwing in the game and the amount of fun that you're allowing people to have in the game, is it really worth it? I feel like with Texas Chainsaw, you can stretch those boundaries a little bit and bring in a little bit more fun and still keep the tone of the game very serious, which is what it is. And that's something that I really think Gunn has done a great job, is bringing in that Texas Chainsaw atmosphere. But at the same time, if you add emotes or you add some fun customizability to each one of the characters and some of the stuff that we talked about, would that really ruin the overall experience? I don't think so. Now, of course, again, we're talking about two completely different IPs here. Killer Klowns is much more jokey as far as the movie, but it can still terrify you, right? They have a fear system that's built into the game. So if you're spending time by yourself, that fear is going to build up, right? You're going to start, hearing the sounds. They're going to be amplified, right? That's one thing that, there was a YouTube channel that did an interview with the guys at Ophonic, and they were talking about how much went into the sound itself. And that was a great interview too, by the way. And so that kind of gave us some insight into what these guys were thinking. So even though there is a bigger, wider variety of weapons and things in the game to keep you interested, that doesn't mean that they're not going to expand upon that. And that's one thing I get from Killer Klowns without having played it, of course, is the vibe just seems, yes, it is a horror movie game, right? But it still feels and seems and looks like it's going to be a ton of fun. And that's what gaming is all about. Now, Texas Chainsaw had 3 maps at launch. They did day and night cycles of each one. So I think Texas, right out of the gate, actually did a pretty good job with the amount of maps they had. They were true to form, they were recognizable, really awesome maps. I just don't know that the catalog of maps after that and the release times was good enough to keep players engaged, along with some of the other issues that we've talked about. Killer Klowns, on the other hand, it sounds like they potentially have 3 or 4 maps waiting in the wings, so stuff that they're already working on. So overall, I think that Killer Klowns is obviously going to take a chunk out of the Texas Chainsaw player base, at least for that initial launch period. But that doesn't mean that Texas has to just completely die off, right? I think there's things that, and I hope there's things that they'll do in the meantime, progression and your level 99 outfits and bringing more customizability into the game. I hope that these are things they'll continue to do, even bringing in bots and just kind of breaking away from some of the mold that keeps this IP together and keeps the seriousness of it while still retaining that, but still allowing people to have fun and have more time inside of the game as opposed to waiting in lobbies. That's my opinion, though. I'd love to hear yours. What do you think about Killer Klowns from what you've seen so far? And again, we're just basing this on what we've seen. Not a lot of us have played it yet. Some of us have, of course, but not a lot of people have played it. So it's all going to depend on how it plays. And once we get this game, we'll be able to find out a lot more. Love to hear your opinion about all of this stuff down below. If you like what I do, consider subscribing. See you in the next one. And as always, hold them down.